Hey y'all, it's V Lee here. Today I have Steve Vigil with us. He's here to share how he applied due diligence to build his real estate empire. Steve is a successful real estate investor here in Houston, Texas, who runs a flipping operation and a sizable meetup group in town. Mr. Steve, so awesome to have you here. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on with you. I really appreciate that.
So what's going on in your world today, Steve?
Well, we're real estate investors. There's always stuff going on. Well, I was hoping I was going to have a closing today, but it's going to get pushed till next week or whatever, as they typically are doing right now. And so, we've got projects going on. I'm very big on checking our projects. It's one of those things that I feel I need to take a little control over and make sure everybody stays on schedule. And then moving offices, setting up for an expo we're doing this weekend. Lots and lots of activities. So that's life as a real estate investor.
Yeah. So Steve for the audience, Steve is a very successful real estate investor in town. What did you do before real estate?
Well, before real estate, I was in corporate America. I was in the event and trade show industry for corporate America. So I was a general manager of a company. We went all over the world, everything we did. And, in my early years, I traveled a lot. And so it really, as we started doing this business, it really has helped me in many ways, because being a general manager, it gave me, because I had salespeople I dealt with. So I, over time, got pretty decent sales skills. I was always very big on the operation side of the business. So estimating, running crews, organizing projects, those were things I did in corporate America that as we started getting into real estate, those things were very helpful for me on that side of it. And then the flip side was with Susan. Susan was the controller of her company. So from the accounting side, from HR, contracts, that's what she always did. So as we started doing this, it was never a question of who's going to do what in our business. It was really obvious who was going to do what. But here we are all these years down the road, and it has really helped us structure our company, and it's helped us with our systems very, very well. And that's kind of how it worked out. It wasn't, like I said, we really never planned this in the beginning. This is how this was going to be all these years down the road, but it's benefited us tremendously.
That's amazing. So you are in today operations. You are doing flipping operations. You have rental. You have owner financing. You have a fund. You loan money. I bet you cannot really do all of that well if you don't have check and balances and due diligence in place.
Due diligence is everything. Yeah, there's lots of checks and balances. And really, as I talk about a lot, where it really starts is having a plan, putting a plan together and structuring everything. And then from your structuring of your plan, what goes with that is, what is your criteria? Mm-hmm. So what is our criteria for buying houses that we're going to flip? What is our criteria for buying properties as rentals? Criteria for owner finance, lending, the fund? Everything is very well spelled out. And as we're talking with different people, depending on whatever that scenario is, oftentimes I've got my criteria written down, and here's a copy. This is what we're going to need, from you to be able to go in that direction for that type of a project. Whether you're looking to borrow money, it's all spelled out, everything we need. If you want to get involved in our fund, well, of course, that's all done. That's all written up through attorneys, SEC attorneys, and everything. So that's very, very well structured. And then following that plan. One of the things that I see people do all the time is they make a plan of what they want to do, and they never follow the plan.
They don't have the discipline to stick with the plan.
Yeah, discipline is everything. When we're working on something, focus, putting those blinders on, not paying attention to all the other nonsense going on around you, and just focusing on what you're doing. That's works for me. I mean, it may not work for everybody, but that has always been worked for me. And I'm very good at focusing. When we're doing something, my focus is
So you
laser.
or
And
Susan, which one's the one with the laser focus?
This episode is brought to you by Buzz Vacation Rentals, a premier property management company in Houston and Galveston. Give Buzz a call today if you need help in managing your short-term and vacation rental properties at 281-549-8432 or visit their website at buzzvacationsrentals.com. Now back to the Real Estate Baller Show.
I think I have more laser focus than Susan, but our roles are very different when we're doing things, and we've got different types of contracts, different types of paperwork coming back and forth. Susan's the one that is very diligent about going through the paperwork, reading every single contract, reading all the different stuff for the attorneys. If we're doing different partnerships on deals or different things, Susan reads every word, and she will correct punctuation. She will correct everything in there.
I need to bring Susan to our team too.
It's funny because we've been going back and forth on some paperwork with one of our attorneys, some very involved paperwork, and I mean that's just Susan's nature. I mean, she's correct, and of course they're attorneys; they don't care, But she corrects all that stuff, and if there's a question, then she raises her hand. Okay, let's answer this question. But it really gives us very good balance, and we need. I mean, really, that's the most important side of the business, because I'm just go go go, and sometimes just go 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 can get you in a lot of trouble if you don't have somebody pulling the reins.
Yes, yeah. I'm more like you. I'm go go go, but I don't have a Susan to do the check and balances for me.
Oh yeah, no. There's been times where I'm really wanting to go on something, and she's like, "Did you read this?" Oh, and I'm like, "Don't. I'm not worried about that." She said, "Did you read this?" You're not doing anything until you read this, and so it works out very, very well.
So when you started out as a wholesaler, you and I know that there's no skin in the game, very low risk being a wholesaler, right? And then as you evolve and grow, you added on new thing. So that's your first, when you first added on that thing, how did you decide what your due diligence was going to be? And as you adding on new things, how do you go about doing all of that?
Well, for me, what has always worked really well, when we started off as wholesalers, and of course, wholesaling was a very different game than it is nowadays. Very, very different. And the thing that I wanted to really focus on as a wholesaler was speaking one-to-one with sellers, because my mentality has always been not chasing the dollars, chasing how I can help that seller. So by becoming a good wholesaler, that really, really, really improved my skills from that standpoint. Now in corporate America, I had done a lot of estimating in my life, so I know how the process of estimating worked, but I didn't know necessarily how to estimate repairs on a house, on a single family home. So as I started doing this, I started honing my skills on estimating repairs. And I had some very good teachers that taught me about, I've always run my comps off MLS. I don't use any of the other stuff, and just coming up with very good systems on how I run my comps. So that really, in the beginning, really helped me focus on the detail of the business, the things that hardly anybody thinks about right now when it comes to wholesaling. And then also I had, my mentor was one of those that, for me to put myself out in front of people. And so I was never one to go out and ask for money or anything like that. And in the beginning, when it came to private money, I was really embarrassed about doing that, because I didn't understand how it worked. But what my mentor was telling me was, put yourself out there as who you are, and people will come to you. Okay. And so I had a potential private lender, and so I just started sharing everything that we were doing, all of our projects, and then we actually lent on a deal, and so I started sharing that information. And after about 3 or 4 months, they came to me and said, we really like what you're doing. How can we get involved? So that opened the door for me to take one of my wholesale deals and keep it and flip it. So that's how that transition started. We're very, very fortunate to have raised tens of millions of dollars in private money from all the deals we've done. And I've never once asked for money. I build relationships and I present opportunities. That's all I do. But I come at it with a very, very different mindset and approach. And it's absolutely wonderful. And of course, now with the fund And other things we do, we raise money in an entirely different manner. We still raise money for deals and stuff, but for raising money from a fund side, that's a whole different animal. And I'm still learning on that one because that's a whole other different ballgame. So as we got into rehabbing houses, once we got doing that really well, and we were rehabbing a lot of homes, then it was time to take the next step and go into holding properties as rental properties. So I want to get really good at one thing before I take the next step. And we never stopped doing those things, but after a year, 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is, we add a new thing to what we're doing. It's continuously helping us grow, and we're still doing the things that we do. So we're as you grow, there's just more things on the plate that you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. I used to think that when I get started, and then one day I'll sit back and enjoy, relax somewhere on the Bahamas. But like you, I keep adding things to my plate, and it just keeps going on. But it's
Right.
exciting, though.
It is, because I mean, I'm definitely trying to go much more towards the passive side of this business now, and it's funny because even though that we're doing that, a deal comes my way, and I still get just as excited, and I'm doing everything I can to chase that deal down. Just I laugh at myself sometimes about it because when we're doing the projects, I'm going, I don't need to be doing this. I should stop doing this. But when a deal comes up, I got to chase it. I can't stop.
That's amazing.
It makes us laugh at ourselves a whole lot.
So with your due diligence, how did you come up with I'm assuming you have some kind of checklist. Did you just Google a checklist, or how did you gather your information?
Well, that due diligence is just something that has evolved over time. And as we've done things and realized things work better than others, with where we sit with the Wealth Club, one of the unfortunate things that happens having the Wealth Club is a lot of people come to me after deals have gone bad because they didn't know anything about due diligence. And I'm very guilty of that myself, because in the early years, now what I talk about when we started, and we've been doing this full time for 10 years, a little over 10 years. But I really actually bought my first rental properties back in 2002. And bought some single families. Then we bought an 8-unit. We bought a 10-unit back, 2008, 2009. Yeah. And the problem was, I was in corporate America, and I thought I was a smart guy because I was the boss, but I didn't know anything about real estate, but I thought I did. I was only kidding myself. And we did some really bad deals, and we lost a lot of money. And I didn't even know what due diligence was. I was like the world's worst at that. And so I learned with a lot of scars on my body over time. And so, but now, due diligence is so important because, like I said, so many people come to me after a deal has gone bad.
If you enjoyed this episode so far, do hit that like and subscribe button now, so that we can keep giving you tips on real estate investing.
And, I do classes on due diligence. Guys, listen to me before you jump into this. If that deal doesn't work out, guess what? There's going to be another one. Don't worry about it. But people get excited. People want to think with their emotions in business, and that's the worst thing that we can do. We've got to think with our heads in business. And so, when we start vetting a deal, actually, I was just on a phone call right before this interview with someone about a deal that they're thinking about lending on. And I'm going, okay, well, let's look at the scenario here. And I laid out a whole bunch of stuff for him. I said, call me back this afternoon after you think about this stuff. We have to vet, if we're going to be lending on a deal, we've got to vet the people that we're working with. That's first and foremost. If you're investing with someone, you've got to vet that person. You've got to find out who that person is. You've got to find out if they have a performance record, if they've worked with other people, are they willing to give you references? There's a lot of different ways that you can go about finding out about individuals before you jump into something. And depending on what they're bringing to you, whatever that deal is, secondly, then we have to look at that deal. If they want you to lend on a deal that they're going to flip, well, we need to stick with our traditional numbers to find out, to make sure that deal is going to support the money that you're lending them. And oftentimes nobody even looks at that. People don't know how to look at that, and they'll run a deal by me, and I'm like, if you're lend on that deal, this deal's like at 85%, and they want to flip this deal. So let's look at all the holding costs, all the behind the scenes costs that's going to come out of this. There's not going to be any money left at the end. And what happens if they're losing money and they don't want to pay you anymore? It's really, really important that we put systems in place to do that. And if we don't have systems in place, we find people that we can work with that will help us and teach us how to do that. Don't be afraid to ask for help, number one, because that was the one thing I never did, is I didn't ask for help when I was young and foolish, very foolish. I'll never be afraid to ask for help in figuring that stuff out. There's people out there. We help lots of our investors out in doing their due diligence. And as you start to learn how to do that, then you put those systems in place that work for you. And it goes back to what I said earlier. What are your standards? What is your criteria? If you're going to lend on a deal, you've got to have standards of how you're lending. You've got to have a criteria by which you follow that you're going to lend your money out. I mean, if someone wants to borrow money from us, great. Our standards are our standards. I mean, this is how we lend. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then you'll need to find somebody else.
You ever gone out of that? You ever gone out of your standards?
We can move our standards a little bit sometimes, depending on a deal, because all deals are different. And sometimes you can change that criteria just a little bit to fit into a deal if you're still very comfortable that deal is going to do well. And I think one of the things that gives me an advantage in that scenario is because I have done so many flips and bought a lot of rental properties. I have a very good tolerance for what I think is going to work and what's not. Then we're also depending on who the person is bringing the opportunity to us. If this is somebody that's brand new, I might not have that confidence in someone that's been doing it for a while. So that there's all those. There's going to be different scenarios every time, but if you've got to set those standards to start off with. Then based on the deal, can you move your criteria a little bit one way or the other? Sometimes you can. I truly think sometimes you can. And sometimes we do.
Rules are meant to be broken, or standards are meant to be tested, right?
That's right. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you don't start, like I said, I start the same way on an evaluation. I start the same way every single time. And then we look at it after we've done that. Now, is there something we can do to still make this deal work? And, we always want to make sure in any type of a deal we're doing that we're setting all the parties up to win. We don't want to see anybody lose. We want everybody to win in the situation. And we also want to build lifetime relationships with people so they keep coming back. We can keep working back and forth till whenever.
Right. So what are some of the big mistakes that you see out there that people make in their due diligence process?
Well, right now, the biggest mistake I'm seeing is everybody's paying top dollar for deals. They don't even know how to do their numbers. And I have people send me stuff all the time to look at their numbers. And I'm like, did you just do some simple math right out of the gate here? You don't even need to send this to me. Just do some simple math. What's your ARV times 70%, 75%, whatever that is. And then what are your repairs? We can do some very simple math here that you can look at and figure. But the biggest problem is most people don't have a good way to run. If they want to do a deal to flip or buy a rental property, they don't have a good way to run comps. And so they're going out to using all these little free services that are out there that your numbers are not accurate. You're not going to get good numbers. So that's the biggest problem. And I think it goes back to asking someone to help you. Most people are afraid to ask someone to help them. And it's not that big a deal. If you're doing this deal, first off, who's your lender? What are they charging you? The cost of your money can tell you a lot about that deal as well. And if you've got a deal that you want to flip and you're bringing $30 or $40 or $50,000 to the table, that might not be a very good deal to try and flip. You might be losing that money at the end of that deal. From a due diligence standpoint for the fix and flip or the rental properties, that's the biggest thing that I see out there happening right now. And everybody's watching TV. Stop watching TV. TV is fantasy. It's not real.
It's not for entertainment, right?
That's right. And not very good entertainment. That's just my
But
opinion.
it's so true, because I've had investors that would come and say, "Hey, V, the ARV is 245, and I'm paying 205, and it's gonna need some work." I'm like, "Well, you're gonna lose money in this deal if you're not careful." You
Yeah.
know, they think that $40,000 spread is gonna get them over stuff and make them money. It's like, you don't realize how much it costs.
No, the cost, there's a lot of cost involved behind the scenes that most people don't talk
Mhm.
about. And until you're doing it, you don't have any
Right?
idea. And the same goes even with rental
Yeah.
properties. I have a lot of people right now that are under the impression, let's buy rental properties, let's buy them retail, and we're gonna we'll get 10 of them, we're gonna be able to retire. Well, no, you're not. I'm not saying that if you buy rental properties retail, that over time you're not going to do fine, because time solves a lot of
Yes.
problems with a rental property. But what people don't understand is when you have that very little cash
Mhm.
flow, that property is going to cost you money every
Right?
year with HOA dues or with vacancies or repairs or just a million different things that you're going to spend money every year. Now, over a long period of time, and if you sell that property, will you make money? Probably. But do you have 20, 25, 30 years to be in that position to do that? At my age, I don't want to wait that long.
You're still pretty young. What are you talking about? Life just getting started.
Still
Yeah, that's
25.
right.
So those are things that I always look at when it comes to due diligence, and there's a million different ways to skin the cat. It's just knowing what works best. And obviously we're in an environment right now where real estate is changing very, very quickly
Hmm.
out there. Inflation is going crazy. Who knows? None of us have a crystal ball. We're many, many years overdue for an adjustment
Yes.
out there. So it wouldn't be a bad thing, in my opinion. But some people do suffer in that scenario as well, which we don't ever want to see. But if that does happen, we are positioned and we are ready to pull the trigger on a number of things that potentially can happen out there. And I think one of the biggest things we might see a change in, we're already starting to see a change in, is the commercial markets out there. I'd love to get back into buying some commercial stuff if we can get the prices right. But we're starting to see, cap rates are starting to go up. So that's a very good thing for us.
Are you buying any commercial right now?
No, no. If I went out and bought commercial at 4, 5, 6 caps, I would go out of business very quickly. I mean, I need to be in that 9, 10, 11 cap range because I'm a value play guy. I've always been a value play investor. And so I've got to buy them deep. I've got to buy them where they need repairs or need whatever, and be able to turn that property around. That's always been my method. I've never been into syndication. I'm not a syndicator. So that method doesn't work for me personally. I know it's very popular right now. It's just certainly something that doesn't appeal to me a lot.
Yeah, syndication is everywhere. Multifamily and syndication is the trend in investing.
It is, and it's kind of funny because since I've been in this business, every year for a year or two, there's something that's big because a couple years ago, what was really big before the pandemic, everybody had to have
Right?
Airbnbs. Now that's kind of cooled down. Now all these strategies are still out there, but it's not the big hot topic. Past couple of years, nothing but syndication has
Yeah.
been the big topic. And I see a lot of syndication deals. I know a lot of people that have gotten into them, and the reality that from my personal perspective is I see a lot more of those deals go south than go good. I see a lot of investors that are going, man, I wish I'd have never done
Hmm.
that. And so, there's just so many variables about syndication. And I'm also the type of investor where I want to have total control of what I'm doing. And in a syndication scenario, you give up all that
Right.
control.
Well, unless you're the deal architect, unless you're the one bringing the deal together.
I know a good handful of the guys out there the managers that run that stuff. And I've actually met a couple of the guys that sit behind the scenes that actually put the deals together. And these are
Yeah.
smart guys. I mean, they definitely are. That's just not a good investment. I want to own 100% of what we're doing. I don't want to own a tiny percentage of
Yeah,
it.
I think I was at an expo a few weeks ago, and they were raising fund for one of these syndications deal too. And they started out as little as $2,000 or $1,000. And God, I don't know. It just felt like a lot of work.
Yeah, well, and you've got to be careful with that kind of stuff because that stuff is really, really regulated by the SEC. I just know with our fund, which is totally different than a syndication deal. With our fund, I had to hire SEC attorneys to put everything together. We got to have our blessing from the SEC. I've heard several people talking about syndication type deals saying that you don't have to be accredited to do that. That really makes me very leery when I hear that because it's definitely my understanding from any attorney I've ever talked to that any of those types of investments are for accredited investors only. And when they're advertising not accredited investors, I don't know what they're doing because it's none of my business. I never even asked what they're doing because I don't want to know. Those are the types of things where, we can see people get in bad situations as investors trying to put your money to work. And especially if you're the one doing it and you're going through someone like Quest and you're doing a self-directed method, all the responsibility falls on you as the investor and where you're going to put your money. The biggest problem I see with that is most people that are putting their money into a place like Quest, they're very green. They don't have any idea. They take that money over there and they don't have, somebody gives them a good story and they're in. And that's when I see a lot of bad things happen. So that one of the things that we're very big on, if we have someone new that wants to come work with us, first thing we do is we sit down and we start the whole education process before we even allow them to even consider working with us and really making sure that they fully understand everything that we do, that they have time to go do their due diligence, time to check out who we are, go through all those checklists to make sure that they're very comfortable with what we do, and then we'll move forward. And I mean, even if we're vetting someone to be a private lender for us on deals, we go through the same process with a private lender before we ever present an opportunity to them, because we want to make sure everybody has the best education they can so we're making good decisions. I don't want people that are making decisions based on, I got excited and that sounded really cool. Because that never turns out good for anybody.
So if you had a magic wand, which area of your operations would you like to be booming in?
Right now, the biggest direction that we're trying to go is with our fund and lending, private lending. Those are where I see the best opportunities. And it also takes us more towards the passive side of life with where we are at this stages of our career. With the fund, I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and that's where we have a lot of our money as well. So we know how good the funds can do for us as investors, and we also really realize with the funds, especially through the pandemic and all that whole period of craziness, that the funds did really, really well. They were very, very stable, where so many investments were kind of going all over the place. And I like stability. The older I get, the more I like stability. And of course, that's part of the education. Anytime we're talking with investors, is what's your risk factor? Where are you at in life? I think it's very important to have all those conversations, put it down on paper so we know what we're working with, so the individuals know where they stand. And obviously, the younger you are, something goes wrong, you've got time to make that money back. But the older you get, something happens, you may not have that time. And we never want to put someone in that position to where they feel that if something does go bad, that we're wiping them out. That would be just like the worst thing in the world.
So Steve, you work all the time. Do you have time for fun?
Oh yeah. As a matter of
fact,
what
are your hobbies?
Hunting season's about.
So what are your hobbies?
We love traveling, although we've done a lot less of it over the past several years. But I'm a very big outdoorsman. So hunting, fishing, I'm very big on that. We just got back from Mexico, I guess a month or so ago. Had a great fishing trip down there. Hunting season starts in a couple weeks. So, trying to take a day here and there and get up to the camp and get everything ready to go for opening day. And then, I've got kids, grandkids and everything. So, trying to have fun with the family as well.
That's amazing. All right. So last questions of the day. How does the audience get in touch with you?
Well, audience can get in touch with me a number of different ways. You can always get a hold of me through the Wealth Club. And that if you go to the website, thewealthclub.org, has all of our contact information on there.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, you should watch Do You Need a Property Survey? And by the way, don't forget to hit that like, that's a thumb up, and the subscribe button. And see you in the next video. And thank you for watching.